Hi, everyone. This is Marvell, CEO of Caregiver Action Network, here with another session within our month-long series with the National Family Caregiver Month. Today, we really have an amazing topic that every single caregiver really needs to hear more and more about, even beyond today's session. And it's about finding strength in community and connections. For what we're going to review today, just to give you a brief overview, we're going to introduce our guest for today, talk a little bit about the power of connection and what that really means. We're going to overview a little bit about what it means to have peer support and what that looks like and putting that in action. Of course, raising up caregiver voices and then closing out, as we always do, with resources that may be of use for everybody that's viewing today. I'm just really been looking forward to this session in particular because been talking about caregiving. There's an aspect of it that doesn't get as much attention as it should. And part of that really has to do with making sure that caregivers understand that, there are some very difficult parts of caregiving that aren't just about your physical demands that may be upon you. It's really about the emotional and mental aspects of it. Nearly two-thirds of caregivers report feeling emotionally drained at some point. And in fact, one in four say that caregiving affects their ability to maintain friendships and social ties. And so today's conversation is really about how do we mitigate some of that impact and understanding that, it's really about connection and why it matters and how we can help caregivers care for themselves as much as they care for others. And to start off our conversation, I'm really glad to welcome back Naya McCray-Brown. Naya and from Mental Health America. Naya has been a wonderful partner for us as their Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships. And we've just done a lot of great work over the last couple of years or so. And it's just been such a joy to continue to connect with you, Naya. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And a little bit later in this session, you'll also hear from Nichole Goble, who is Director of Community Initiatives for Caregiver Action Network. So let's get started. So, Naya, I'd be curious to just start off with, what is your caregiving connection? What has brought you to where you are right now with Mental Health America? And is that connection one that is rooted in a past in caregiving?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us here today and for allowing us to share a little bit more about all of the resources that we have for caregivers and all of the different opportunities that we have to build community with caregivers. So, I have personal experience as a caregiver. I was a caregiver for my two elderly parents during the pandemic, which was an interesting time to be a
Yeah.
caregiver for sure. They've since, moved on to more intensive caregiving and they have additional support of nurses and things like that. But at the time, I also was becoming a licensed therapist in the state of Virginia. And so, as someone who worked really closely with families and really closely with couples, I got to see firsthand the impact of caregiving on different community members and be able to provide them with additional support in the therapeutic environment. MHA obviously is the nation's longest standing mental health advocacy organization. And we've really made caregiving a priority in our work over the last, I would say 2 or 3 years. And so it's really been interesting to take my lived experience as a caregiver, my professional experience as a therapist working with caregivers, because, I think it's safe to say that any therapist who's working with family units or sometimes maybe even individuals probably has a caregiver amongst their clientele and to be able to incorporate that into my work as the director of community engagement at MHA.
Wow. No, that's great. I mean, it's this skill set that you're talking about that it's come together, that really is kind of a necessary set of skills for really engaging and supporting caregivers. So thank you so much for all the energy you put into your work and for helping caregivers. So for our conversation, there's a lot of emotional weight that comes along with caregiving. And there's really we talk at times about caregivers being invisible, and there's also this piece of it where there's this, invisible or silent epidemic amongst caregiver with burnout. Could you talk to us a little bit, from your experience and from serving Mental Health America, you know, what are we talking about when we talk about caregiver burnout? What does that look like? And how might somebody recognize it in themselves, or maybe see it in another person that's in a caregiving role?
Totally. I think that's a great question, and it's something that's really important to have discussed in conversations like these so that folks can start to explore maybe how those symptoms are showing up for themselves or how they may be showing up in community members. So I would say that's also a responsibility as we're talking about building community of those that you love to sort of check in and see how those that you're caring for might be impacted by their role as a caregiver. I would say that caregiver burnout is something that may be related to role strain. So, caregiving is one of their roles, but oftentimes they're also wife, father. They oftentimes hold full time jobs. So, they may be an employee, they may be leaders in faith communities or community centers, or take a role in their village as serving the youth as well. And so, oftentimes, this role as caregiver is one of many hats that folks are wearing, and caregiver burnout is likely related to trying to juggle all of the different things that they are attempting to do to show up for community. Some of the symptoms of that may be irritability, difficulty sleeping, um, under-eating, overeating, there's sort of a spectrum there. Folks may have difficulty with this sort of sensation of numbness or detachment, not really enjoying things that they used to enjoy prior to taking on that role because they're very preoccupied, obviously, with their new role as a
Mhm.
caregiver. There may also be brain fog or memory loss, difficulty tracking tasks because there are so many new tasks to incorporate into their day. I would say some of those are the signs of burnout in general, but particularly caregiver burnout, as this is often a new and sudden role that they're taking on.
Yeah, I keyed in on one particular word you said, village,
Mhm.
and recognizing, that that's reason that it's a saying. It does take a village at time, and I think it might have been like on Instagram or TikTok or something, and I saw a creator talk about, self care is just one part of it. It's about community care as well, and so can you talk to us a little bit about what does it mean to be in community as a caregiver, and why that type of support can be helpful in mitigating some of the issues that come with caregiver burnout?
Absolutely. What we know for sure in the mental health community, and there's not very many things that we know for sure,
Hmm.
but one of the things that we know for sure is that social connection and community is a protective factor against just about any mental health diagnoses. So, having really strong bonds of those that you love, feeling connected to the community that you live within, having folks that you can count on when times get difficult, all of those are really strong indicators that someone will be able to navigate a crisis or navigate changes in their daily living. So, community is, some would even call it preventative medicine for those who are experiencing any form of sudden change in their lifestyle. And I would say that from my personal experience as a caregiver, it certainly is as well. The meal trains, people just taking rides to the doctor's office with me, folks that could show up and just be present as you're navigating a change is really, you can't overstate the importance of that as someone who's navigating any form of change, but particularly a caregiving change as well. I would also say that community can be a way to sort of re-engage folks in the things that they used to enjoy or
Hmm.
other aspects of their identity. So it can offer a respite support or breaks so that folks don't lose all of the other aspects of their identity that are important to them, but also assist them in being able to find pleasure, find joy, find happiness in their daily lives as well.
I appreciate you putting that way because I wanted to talk a little bit about stigma and just recognizing that when particularly talking about mental health, there is and can be a stigma, a long-standing stigmas
Yeah.
associated with mental health and mental illness. Can you talk just a little bit about the fact that you end up with really this bringing together of different types of stressors that bring different types of stigma. So you can have financial stress that comes along with it, and maybe you have of a lived experience or cultural background. It's like, well, we don't talk about money. Okay, so that ends up being an issue, and then you have the stress of not being able to emote or share your feelings and emotion. You just kind of bottle it up, with the stigma of don't talk about mental illness, and don't say that this person has depression or that someone in our family is suffering from something. And so, can you talk to us a little bit about how stigma can be combated and why that is such an important part of this work?
Yeah, I think stigma is one of the largest indicators of folks not seeking treatment, of folks not really being able to reach out to their community for support, and oftentimes really battling with any type of distress internally instead of being able to get the help that they need externally to cope with the difficulties that they are undergoing at the time. So, stigma culturally, as you mentioned before, financially, there can be a huge source of stress there, not really talking about how medical bills may be piling up or different things are happening um, where maybe they have to change their employment or they have to do part-time work instead of being able to do full-time work. And it can be for different folks maybe unsafe even to talk about the financial changes that are happening because
Mhm.
they don't necessarily feel like they'll be supported by their community. They may be seen as needy or asking for too much help, and that could isolate them from the folks that they have really learned to rely on in other ways. So, I would say some of the ways that we can combat that stigma is just by opening up the conversation and discussions like these, or even creating space for folks to talk about their needs at the family dinner table and faith communities. If you have a gym group that you walk with on the weekends or a book club, just saying like at the top of the meeting or while you're doing the different activities that you're participating in, hey, if anyone needs additional resources, I'll stay a little bit after. Feel free to come talk to me and I can show up and help you. I think conversations like those and really normalizing that we're all undergoing a different level of distress at any
Mhm.
given point, whether it's related to caregiving, a mental health condition, or just being a human in 2025, really creating that space and normalizing the conversation around our struggles can support folks in battling that stigma.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it that because right now there are so many degrees of reason and origins of why people may be feeling stress, and opportunities for relieving that stress, being elusive to some, always defaulting to, okay, I got to get X, Y, and Z done for this
Yeah.
person, I got to get this thing done for the kids, and just recognizing that going from one thing to the other and one thing to the other as a means to kind of you just end up in this survival mode is what we hear sometimes, from caregivers. I'd be interested to hear, so I know that we work with Mental Health America, particularly about amplifying your tools and many of the resources you have there. So if I were a caregiver that was experiencing some of those concerns where I really can't get my head above water, and it's so hard to just even break out of the survival mode. Can you talk to us a little bit about the type of resources that perhaps I could seek out and find through Mental Health America?
Absolutely. MHA has 130 affiliates across the country. So I work at our national office in Alexandria, Virginia, but just about in any given state in the United States of America, there's likely an MHA affiliate, and the affiliates offer mental health referrals, direct service supports, support groups, sometimes housing assistance, and things like that. So I would say the first thing that I would recommend to someone who's looking for additional support is to get connected with their local MHA affiliate. If you're not quite ready for that, or if you're like, you know what, I need some things that I can do for myself internally before I'm willing to reach out to community members. MHA also has the nation's largest screening program. So we're able to connect folks with either DIY tools that they can do to find mindfulness or additional supports, resources, local therapeutic services, things like that through our national screening and prevention program, where there are 13 different screeners for a variety of different mental health
Hmm.
conditions like PTSD, depression, anxiety. And it's a really quick, anonymous, and really empirically validated way to learn a little bit more about the symptoms that may be showing up, such as those that we mentioned earlier. So, sleeplessness, difficulty
Hmm.
with appetite, maybe brain fog, things like that. And to see, you know, maybe there's a deeper problem here than I had originally anticipated. Maybe there's some additional support that I can get to be able to help me as I'm learning this new aspect of my identity. What are some ways that I can get help for myself? And then when I'm ready, be able to reach out to my community members or a local affiliate or a local community center to be able to get extra help. So I think that CAN actually has a screening URL available on the CAN website. So you're able to access it there, and as well as some of the CAN resources and support groups as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, through our new site, nfcmonth.org, folks can reach out and find really at their fingertips a whole host of tools and content across a lot of different subject and topics. It gives me reason to even think deeper about so if I'm that individual, I'm reaching out, I'm trying to understand better about my own brain and how it works, and talk to me a little bit about how as a caregiver, I can communicate to others to let them know what my needs might be, or being able to really advocate for my loved one and for myself. Like, what advice would you give for that caregiver that really, wants to be able to share more, and also making sure that the communication channels don't break down during those survival moments and when they really are stressed?
Absolutely. Great question. Great question. So, actually, this year, MHA compiled so many different resources for caregivers onto our website. You can access those at mhanational.org/caregiving. So, CAREGIVING. Um, on that website, we do have sort of conversational guides. So, things that caregivers can work through in order to be able to communicate their needs to a loved one, or to be able to think through how they can communicate their needs to those that they're caring for, to be able to ask questions, to be able to support them in getting the help that they may need in the doctor's office or the therapy office. And we've cat- cataloged, whew, we've
Yeah, you
cataloged
got it. You
those,
got it.
right? It got all twisted up. Catalog those on that website so that folks can access both the resources that they need to care for their loved ones and the resources that they need to care for themselves.
Wow. Yeah, really glad to hear about those resources being compiled together with an MHA, and also our collaborative way of sharing each other's resources across our digital footprints. So it this has really been an enlightening conversation because it's given us, much more insight into just the weight that can come along with being a caregiver, and really, it's something that just is not talked about enough. I'd be curious to just hear from you. What other advice or insights would you give to folks that aren't a caregiver right now, but perhaps are trying to support a caregiver, in their lives? It could be a manager or supervisor in the workplace that's recognizing that, wow, Susie Q has been taking her mom to the doctor's office, a couple times a month, and or understanding that a sister or a brother or a cousin is in a primary caregiving role. What advice would you give for the people that are supporting the caregivers?
Yeah, I would say based on like my personal lived experience and the experience that I've had as a clinician, oftentimes caregivers would even show up to therapy and we would spend so much time talking about their loved one and talking about what they were navigating and how hard it was for their loved one that they were caring for. And then I would check the clock and I would be like, well, what about you? How are you doing? How are you feeling today? How's the week been for you? And even to switch their brain into dialoguing about what they were experiencing was a real challenge for some folks. And so I would say if you are noticing someone who has taken on a new caregiving role, maybe has been adjusting to any sort of other change, in addition to their caregiving role, one of the things that you can do is create space for them to think about their own mental health and well-being. How can you encourage them and kind of create an opportunity for them to put one thing down and to think about themselves? So whether that is, hey, I noticed that this work task is something that I can do easily for you. Is there a way that we can take a walk at lunch so that that's one less thing that you have to think about and I'll do it for you after lunch? Or if you're a community member, are there ways that you can drop off meals so that you can have conversation with them at the dinner table? and they don't have to consider the cognitive burden of planning a meal, thinking about dietary needs, nutrition, and things like that. Anything that you can do to create an opportunity for them to engage with their own self-care with you and alongside you, I would say is a huge benefit to caregivers. And it also helps them to reimagine a world where their needs are also a priority.
Uh, yeah, I really like that last line because that's the part of it that is so easily forgotten, and you hear it all the time, and we do it as well at Caregiver Action Network. Is that individuals supporting other individuals, particularly when they're a relative, they don't see it always as being a caregiver. In fact, most of the time, they don't recognize themselves as a
Absolutely.
caregiver. They're seeing themselves as the dutiful son, the loving mother, the thoughtful granddaughter. I mean, whatever it may be, as opposed to thinking of you're in a role that one takes up a lot of energy and time, and two is one that is going to require you to refill your cup in some way because you are giving so much, of yourself. And so it's that piece that people really forget. So I really like underscoring that one role people can have is to help that caregiver be reminded that, everything you're doing for mom or cousin or sister or brother, you deserve all of that as well for yourself. You deserve to be connected with community. You deserve to have some peace and quiet, even though it may be hard to find. But the advice of really helping that person find that way, I really like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge honor to be a caregiver. I think culturally, so many folks understand that we want our elders to be safe and whole. We want folks in our community, maybe even our peers, our spouses, our sister, our brother, to be safe and whole and connected. And it's really easy for us as human beings to think about and externalize the needs of other people, but sometimes to really be able to shift our brains and to really focus on the fact that you are also people. You're also a human being and you're someone
Hmm.
who has needs and wants and desires, and you deserve to be able to fulfill those as well. Is it takes some practice and it takes community support to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Naya, thank you so much for once again partnering with us. The information that you shared today, but the vast amount of content and resources that MHA provides, and really brings forward continually out of the shadows conversations that really have to be had. It's just amazing to be able to see folks not only understand that there are resources out there for them, but that you aren't alone by any stretch of the imagination. You are not alone in this at all. So thank you so much, Naya, for being with us here today. We always appreciate you taking the time, and we will talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
No problem. Well, folks, that's our topic, our part of the conversation today for today's webinar. We're going to move on to our next guest, but really just want to implore everybody to recognize that not only today's conversation about mental health and awareness is important to everyone, because for those times where you may be feeling great, which I hope is more often than not, there may be someone in your circle that isn't feeling so great. And so understanding how to help and how to reach out and support is really what it's all about. So Naya McCray-Brown, thank you so much for taking the time today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Great night.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nichole Goble. I'm the Director of Community Initiatives here at Caregiver Action Network, and I'm really excited to be here today with you to talk a little bit about a couple of our resources to help caregivers connect, to plug in to resources as well as other caregivers to be able to expand their kind of caregiver support network. So I'm going to be talking specifically about our National Caregiver Help Desk tool, and I'll also be talking a little bit about how it's expanded a little bit for those of you who may be familiar with our help desk. And I'll also be talking about our Caregiver Action Network Facebook community, which is really, really exciting. So, one of the things that you may have noticed here at Caregiver Action Network is that we've really been focused on making sure that caregivers are connected to both resources but also each other to make sure that there are ways that caregivers can come together and share, whether it's in a more group setting or it's one-on-one. And so within kind of our peer support networks, which I always feel a little bit weird saying peer support network because it feels a very like in the kind of like bubble term. But really, like I said, it's just about caregivers being able to connect to each other. So that caregiver support network. So I want to break down some of the resources that we have that we kind of pull together that I think speak to those specific needs of caregivers, the resources, and each other. So Kindly Human is a 24/7 support network, and it offers the ability for caregivers to connect one-on-one. So not within a group setting, but one-on-one. And we have some really great capacity in being able to connect caregivers within this platform, as well as support kind of like a document library where caregivers can also view different resources, especially CAN resources, as well as watch videos from other caregivers to speak to their own lived experience. So Kindly Human is a great resource for that. And my colleague Dakota, Heath, is going to be, I think, sharing a little bit more about that. But I want to focus on the Caregiver Action Network National Caregiver Help Desk and its expansion, as well as our Facebook community. So, what is the help desk? Well, it's a dedicated resource for that one-on-one support. So again, focusing in on that one-on-one support where a caregiver can call or they can use the chat feature on our website, or they can email and get connected to an expert who is going to be able to connect them to the resources that they need. And they do this by listening. I know that sometimes when I've reached out for help, whether it's in kind of a situation where I'm reaching out to kind of a customer support line or whatever the case may be, we don't always know what kind of help we're looking for. And this is really where this help desk is so vital because these experts are able to listen and really make sure that they're understanding what the caregiver is looking for. And again, connect them to the appropriate resources to kind of get them on their way. And like I said, we have expanded into allowing access to the Caregiver Help Desk app. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. I also want to mention the Caregiver Action Network community Facebook page. I adore our Facebook community. It kind of feels awkward to talk about, being excited about a Facebook group because I guess in some ways it feels a little bit antiquated, but it has been phenomenal. We have just under 3,000 engaged folks as part of our Facebook community. And when I say engaged, oh, do I mean engaged? These are individuals that are sharing stories, experiences, just kind of those, checking in, making sure that everyone is doing okay. How was your week? It's a really amazing, supportive community. And one of the cool things that we're able to do are what we call real talks, where myself, sometimes different partners from different organizations who have some resources for family caregivers, other staff here at Caregiver Action Network, whatever the case may be, well, we like to have kind of a brief little informal Facebook Live with the group where we talk about a subject or we talk about specific resources for caregivers. And it's really guided by the folks in the group. They let us know the kind of topics and resources that they really want to learn more about. And we really try to lean into that. So an amazing, amazing resource. And I'm going to show you the links and the ability to explore those a little bit more in just a second. But before I do that, I do want to circle back to the help desk and talk about the expanded capacity to the app and how you can find out more on Caregiver Action Network's website. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And I'm going to start sharing over on our web page here. So let me see if I can find it. No, that's not what I wanted. I tell you, whenever you are in the thick of it, technology always pulls a fast one on you. So let's see if I can get us to that website. Just give me 1 second here. Here we go. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. And I'm just going to show you what this help desk page looks like now that we have a little bit more robust information on there. So if you can give me just a second to make sure I get this shared. Okay. So this is our landing page for the Caregiver Help Desk, as you can see, and it's pretty easy to navigate on our website. We have a little call out button here at the top that says Caregiver Help Desk. So you click that and you get right to the page. We always like to make sure that the help desk is front and center on the resources that we share. Now, as you can see here, we start off by talking a little bit about how you can engage with those caregiving experts, those care advocates. So we have the phone number, but as you can also see here on your screen, there's a little bit of a widget down here in the corner, and that's a help desk tool. So you can chat. And one thing I do want to emphasize, you're not going to be chatting with a bot. If you go into this little chat widget here, this is actually going to be another care advocate, a caregiving expert, just like if you picked up the phone and called. And so we have the number here, a little bit more information about how to reach out. You can see here, this is where we'll get into a little bit more of the app that we've expanded access to. So this app is kind of what it sounds like. It's an app where you can go and have access to a slew of amazing resources. Resources from CAN, but also resources that have been in kind of this repository, this document library that are amazing and that have been crafted and kind of vetted by these caregiving experts that are part of the Caregiver Help Desk and Carewell team. Really great stuff. So you're going to have access to a ton of different resources. You're also going to get access to support groups. Again, that's something that's so useful. You can really figure out the kind of support group and topics and things that are really interesting to you and really be able to connect with other caregivers in those spaces. And so within the app, you will get connection to those support groups and be able to participate. Like I said, all of the information that you need to get connected is going to be at caregiveraction.org/helpdesk. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and easy to get out there. But we're always sharing stuff about our help desk on our socials as well. So that was a little bit about kind of the expanded aspect of help desk. And now I'm going to share again our screen with our PowerPoint so I can just make sure that you have the links that you need to get connected to both the help desk as well as our caregiver Facebook community. So 1 second, let me share. So now here we have our caregiver help desk and caregiver action network community. And what's really great about, like I said, here you get a little bit of a scan me so that you can get direct access to our Facebook community. You can also look up the Caregiver Action Network community when you log into Facebook and you'll get right there. I do want to stress that it is a private Facebook group, so you can feel that you're in kind of a safe space. Like I said, lots of caregivers like to share in that group. Another thing I do want to emphasize that also about the Caregiver Help Desk, and it is kind of broken down on the webpage that has lots of data and information about how you can get connected to the help desk and the app. The help desk itself, so that the telephone number, the app, They're not 24/7 where you can get connected to a live individual. They are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. However, you can reach out by phone. You can utilize that that chat feature. You can send an email, and it's just going to allow you to send that on. And within the next business day or two, you're going to get a response. And I will say, as someone who works with a lot of our team on the help desk crew, they are very quick about getting back to folks. I also want to emphasize this isn't a crisis line. We really encourage folks that if you are experiencing an emergency, that you utilize those resources, so 911 and other emergency access points, because this isn't an emergency line, but definitely that caregiver support line. So I hope this has done a great job at kind of laying out some of these resources. If you have any questions, please reach out and we're happy to give you more information. Thanks so much.
I just want to take a moment to thank our generous sponsors that have really made this webinar series possible and our entire Plug Into Care campaign. As you can see here, it represents organizations across the country and across the globe that center caregiving in everything they do and making it possible for family caregivers across the country to really be there for their loved ones, feel supported, and ensure that really they can do their best by ensuring that their loved ones can thrive. So thanks so much to our sponsors. And in addition to that, I want to make sure everyone has the information they need. So reach out to us in any way that is most comfortable for you. Do it often. And you can reach out to us on the web at caregiveraction.org. But also know that we're just a phone call away at our caregiver help desk, our National Caregiver Help Desk, which also now has a downloadable app that you can find. And so feel free to check that out. As always, our resources are of no cost to caregivers. And so whether you engage with us through our website, through our social media, welcome you to join our Facebook group as well. But no matter what, just know you are not alone, and Caregiver Action is here to stay connected with you.